He picked up the wine glass and poured it over my boyfriend's head. Right there, table 7. Chez Blanc restaurant, a Thursday night. Merlot, expensive, dark red. It hit Kwon Seon-ho's white shirt like a bloodstain already formed, and the entire restaurant, 51 people, went dead, silent. My ex-husband Darius set the empty glass down, straightened his jacket, and smiled. Before this story goes any further, hit that like button right now and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, because what Seon-ho did next changed everything, and you need to be here for all of it. Seon-ho did not move. Not 1 centimeter. He sat with wine running down the side of his face, dripping off his jaw onto the white tablecloth, and he looked at Darius the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray. Quiet, precise, like a man calculating something the rest of the room did not yet have the information to understand. I was on my feet, chair scraped back and struck the table behind me. Darius, my voice came out lower than I expected. Steadir, get out! Darius ignored me. He had always been good at that. I am not here for you, he said to me, without looking at me. He was still watching Seon-ho, still smiling. I am here for him, because somebody needs to warn this man about what he has gotten himself into. He turned to address the room then, actually turned, like he had an audience, and he knew it, and he wanted every single one of those 51 people to hear him clearly. This woman, Darius said, gesturing at me with the kind of casual contempt that takes years to perfect, is not who she has presented herself to be. She is unstable. She is dishonest. She destroyed our marriage, and then she rewrote history. So she could walk away looking like the victim. Whoever you are, he looked back at Seon-ho, you deserve to know the truth before she does to you what she did to me. The room was so quiet I could hear the candles. 51 people, forks down, phones coming out. Every single eye in that restaurant pointed at our table. Heat crawled up the back of my neck. The shame was familiar. That specific, practiced shame I had spent 14 months in therapy dismantling brick by brick. And for one terrible second I was back inside my marriage, back inside the version of myself that apologized for things that were not my fault and made herself smaller so Darius could feel large. 1 second, Seon-ho spoke. Darius Mensah. He said it quietly, conversationally. Like he was reading a name off a list, Darius stopped. Seon-ho finally reached for his napkin. He wiped the wine from his jaw. He folded the napkin in half, set it on the table, and looked at my ex-husband with an expression that was not anger, not contempt, not even particularly intense. It was the expression of a man who has just decided something, and is now simply communicating his decision to the relevant party. You own Mensah Global Event Solutions, Seon-ho said. 41 employees, 14 years of operation. Your anchor contract, the one that covers 62% of your annual revenue, is with the Hanel Group Hospitality Division. He paused. The Hanel Group Hospitality Division is a subsidiary of KSH Holdings. Another pause, shorter this time. KSH Holdings belongs to me. Silence in the restaurant changed texture. It had been shocked silence. Now it was something else. Held breath. The kind that happens when a room full of people simultaneously realizes they are watching something much larger than what it appeared to be. Darius's smile had not completely left his face yet, but it was working on it. What I am telling you, Seon-ho continued, his voice still perfectly level, is that your primary revenue contract exists because I have chosen to allow it to exist. That choice can be revisited. He stood up. He was taller than Darius by 3 inches, which I had never particularly noticed before and noticed very much now. My name is Kwon Seon-ho. If you ever come within speaking distance of this woman again, I will revisit it. That is not a threat. It is a schedule. Darius laughed. It was not a good laugh. You cannot just, that is not how business works. Leave the restaurant, Seon-ho said. Please. Please was the most frightening part. It was said with the tone of a man who only uses polite language when the alternative would be excessive. Darius left. He tried to look like he was choosing to leave. He tried to maintain the posture of a man who had said what he came to say and was now parting on his own terms. But his hands were not quite steady when he picked up his phone from the table he had been sitting at, and the door swung too hard behind him, and 51 people watched every step he took to the exit. No one in that restaurant said a word. Seon-ho sat back down. He picked up his wine glass, his own untouched, and took one measured sip. He looked at me across the table. "Are you all right?" I sat down. My legs were not entirely reliable. "No," I said honestly. He nodded. That was the correct answer, and he respected me for giving it. "Do you want to leave?" "Yes." He raised his hand for the bill without another word. "My name is Zola. I am 34 years old. I am a landscape architect and I design rooftop gardens, green spaces that help cities breathe, pockets of living earth above concrete and steel. It is the work I love most in the world. It is also indirectly the reason I met Kwon Seon-ho. He hired my firm to design the rooftop garden for his new headquarters building. I did not know who he was when I walked into that first meeting. My assistant's brief said only, KSH Holdings, privately held investment group. Founder does not give interviews. I had Googled the company the night before and found very little, which I had learned over the years was usually either a sign that a company was very small or very careful. KSH Holdings, I would come to understand, was the second kind. Seon-ho was waiting in the conference room alone when I arrived. No assistant beside him, no entourage hovering. Just a man in a dark navy sweater with my proposal open in front of him and a coffee going cold at his elbow. "Page 9, he said, before I had fully sat down. "Your cost projection for the irrigation system. It is underestimated by about 12%. I opened my own copy, checked his math in my head. He was right. "I will revise it," I said. "The rest is excellent." He closed the proposal. "I want to move forward. When can your team start?" No negotiation on price, no performance of power, no drawn-out back and forth to demonstrate how important he was. He had read the document properly, found the one error, confirmed the rest was good, and was ready to proceed. I remember thinking, this is a man who does not waste time, his own or anyone else's. I did not think anything else about him for approximately 3 more weeks. Then he came to the rooftop. Most clients send assistants to check on installation progress. Seon-ho came himself. He stood at the eastern edge of the roof and looked out at the city below for a long time without speaking. My crew was working around him, and he stood perfectly still in the middle of it, like a man who had spent his whole life in motion-filled rooms. Eventually he said, without turning around, "My mother grew perilla in a small garden behind our apartment in Mapo-gu. She grew it every year even though the drainage was bad and it never came out as well as she wanted. I was measuring planter depth on the western wall. I did not stop working. Why did she keep trying?" I asked. "She said a garden that gives up is just dirt," he said. I stopped measuring. I looked at the back of his head, dark hair, slightly longer than corporate, and felt something shift. The way a window shifts when you find the latch. Not dramatic, just open. He started to say something else. I watched it move across his face, something that was not about the garden, and then he seemed to side against. "Yes," he said instead. "Good," and picked up his phone. I went back to measuring. Something passed across his face then, quick and unguarded, for his expression settled back into its usual precision. I did not know what to call it at the time. Later, I would. "I planted perilla on your east bed," I said. "It will do well up here. Good drainage." He turned around. He looked at the planter beds, then at me. He was looking at me with an expression he did not immediately adjust. Not for long. 2 seconds, maybe 3. Then he looked away first, back to the planter beds, and I made a note of it somewhere I tried not to examine. "Thank you," he said, and he meant more than the perilla. I could tell. I just did not know yet what the more was. We had dinner for the first time 6 weeks after that. A small Korean restaurant near the building. He called it simply the good place. Turned out to be both accurate and all the recommendation it needed. We talked for 3 hours. Not the polished, careful talking of 2 people performing well for each other. The other kind, where you forget to manage what you are saying and then notice too late that you have said something true. At one point, I told him that I had become a landscape architect, partly because buildings felt permanent in a way that frightened me, and gardens felt permanent in a way that did not. And I had never said that to anyone before, and did not entirely know why I was saying it now. He was quiet for a moment. Then, my mother says the same thing about cooking, that a meal disappearing is not loss, it is completion. Do you believe that? I am still deciding, he said, about a lot of things. He looked at me when he said it, just briefly, then looked away. That was the second time I had caught him doing that. Looking away first, I filed it under things I was not ready to name. Talked about his parents, who had come from almost nothing and built something, and about my parents, who had come from something and lost most of it and rebuilt anyway. We talked about the particular exhaustion of being the person in any room who everyone expects to hold everything together. You do that, I said. Hold everything together. So do you, he said. How can you tell? Looked at me. He looked at me. Because you have been sitting for 3 hours with your shoulders pulled up to your ears and you have not noticed. I had not noticed. I put my shoulders down. The relief was embarrassing. He looked away, so I could have the moment without an audience. That was Seon-ho. He noticed everything. He just never made you feel observed. I walked home that night with my hands in my pockets, and the particular low warmth of having been seen by someone who was still choosing what to do about it. And I knew the feeling, the particular comfort of someone making careful space for you. And I also knew that it could be a room or a cage, and from the outside they looked identical. I had been in a very well-decorated cage for 7 years. I sat with that for 3 days before I let myself call what was happening anything at all. My sister Amara found out about him approximately 11 days after that dinner because I am incapable of keeping anything from her, and also because she had started calling me every 2 days to ask if I was eating. It's her way of asking if I am okay, which is her way of saying I love you. Who is the man, she said on the phone, not as a question. What man? Zola. He was a client, was, Amara. Bring him to Sunday dinner, she said. I am making jollof. Jollof rice is not something Amara makes casually. Jollof is an event. Jollof means she has decided this person is worth the investment of her full attention, and she intends to evaluate them thoroughly, using the only metric she trusts, whether they eat properly. Seon-ho came to Sunday dinner. He ate 2 full plates without being pressured, asked Amara where she learned to balance the tomato base that way, helped clear the table before anyone suggested it, sat at the kitchen counter afterwards talking to her about a community garden initiative in the city's South District for 45 minutes. I pretended to be busy with my phone in the next room and actually just listened to them through the wall. Amara pulled me aside when he left. He is not performing, she said. I always know when they are. He is just real. I know, I said. You deserve real, she said, firm, like she was closing a case. I know, I said again. Do you, though? She looked at me with the particular eye she had been giving me since we were children, the one that could see through every wall I built around myself. Because Darius had you convinced for 7 years that you deserved whatever he gave you, and what he gave you was nothing. I did not answer that, not because it was wrong. Because it was so right it sat in my chest like a stone I was still learning to put down. Here is what I did not know during those months. Darius had been watching. I had blocked his number after the divorce. I had moved apartments. I had drawn the line cleanly and walked away on my own side of it. What I did not account for was a man who does not accept lines. He had found out about Seon-ho through a mutual acquaintance. Someone who saw us at the City Architecture Awards in February and apparently thought Darius still deserved updates about my life. Darius started appearing at events he knew I would attend, not approaching, just appearing, standing at the periphery where I could see him but had no legitimate reason to make anything of his presence, letting me feel the weight of being watched. Then he escalated. He called Seon-ho's office twice using a false name, a vendor inquiry, according to the receptionist who flagged it. He sent a message through a mutual contact, strongly suggesting I had a history of emotional volatility potential partners should be aware of. He reached out to one of my firm's major clients with what he characterized as professional concerns. I did not know any of this. Not yet. What I knew was that Darius has walked into J. Blanc on a Thursday evening and poured wine over the man I was, falling in love with in front of 51 witnesses. And what I did not know yet was that Sion Ho had been aware of every single move Darius made the past 6 weeks. He told me on a Sunday, 3 days after the restaurant. He came to my apartment. He brought mayoguk, seaweed soup, warm from the good place. Because I had mentioned once, months earlier, that I always needed soup when I was stressed, and he had stored that information in whatever part of him, stored everything I said, precisely and without losing a word. He had also brought japchae because 3 weeks before I had said I liked it, and he had written nothing down that I saw. He set it on the table beside the soup, and then seemed to realize he had brought too much and said, the first uncertain thing I had ever heard from him, I did not know which one you would want first. Soup, I said. Always soup first. He nodded, like he was filing that. I watched him do it and felt something dangerous stir in my chest. He set the soup on my kitchen table. He sat across from me, and then he said, I need to tell you something that I should have told you sooner. He told me about the false name calls, about the message through the mutual contact, about the client approach. He told me that Yoon Jai, his head of corporate affairs, had flagged the first call on day 2, and that he had made the decision to monitor the situation without involving me because he had wanted to understand the full pattern before he brought it to me. He told me it had been the wrong decision. He said, it was information that affected you directly, and you had the right to it. I handled it as though it were a business problem instead of your life. I apologize. No excuses, no minimizing. He named what he had done wrong and he stopped talking. I sat with that for a long time. He did not fill the silence. He did not explain further or soften the edges. He just let me have it. I thought about the ways Darius had always had reasons. Good reasons, logical reasons, reasons that sounded like protection, until you looked at the shape they made over 7 years. A shape that was not protection at all. I thought about the difference between a man who decides for you because he does not trust you with your own life, and a man who decides for you because he is still learning where the line is. I was not certain those two things looked the same. I was not certain they did not. Did you plan to tell me? I asked. Before the restaurant. Yes, he said, this week. I was waiting until I understood the full scope. And if there had been no restaurant? Then I would have told you this week, he said, exactly as I am telling you now. I looked at him across the table. I believed him. That was the part that made it simple and complicated at the same time. I believed him, and I knew that I believed him, and I knew that I had believed Darius too at the beginning. But that was not fair. I knew it was not fair. I was not going to punish this man for the sins of the last one. It was not the apology I had been angry I didn't get from Darius for 7 years. It was something quieter and more costly. A man telling me, plainly, that he had made a choice that was not his to make, and naming it without being asked. What happened with his contract, I asked. Monday morning, Mensa Global received formal notice that the Honol Group contract would not be renewed, Sion-ho said. The cancellation is within standard terms. No legal exposure. And? He met my eyes. By Tuesday, I had completed the acquisition of Mensa Global's primary supplier, an agri-logistics company in the Eastern District. It was undervalued by roughly 30%. Sound purchase on its own merits. A pause. Darius's company cannot operate at its current scale without a supply agreement with the new owner. Which is you? Which is me? I looked at him across my kitchen table. At this man who had watched my ex-husband wage a quiet war against my life and had responded with the precision and patience of someone who understood that the most devastating thing you can do to a bully is not to fight him. It's to buy the ground he's standing on and wait for him to notice. You did all of this, I said, And you brought me soup. The soup is separate, he said. You are stressed. You needed soup. Something cracked open in my chest, not painfully, the way a window cracks open in spring, just enough to let the air change. Yes, why? I asked, not about the contracts. Not about the acquisition. I meant the whole of it. Why he showed up. Why he stayed. Why he had been quietly building a wall around my life without asking for credit or thanks. He was quiet for a long moment, the kind of quiet I had learned to trust. Because you have already survived enough, he said. You should not have to keep surviving the same man. I reached across the table and took his hand. He turned his palm up without hesitation, like he had been waiting for exactly that, like there was nothing in the world more natural. We ate the soup together. It was the best thing I had tasted in months. Darius called Amara's number 12 weeks later. He had tried mine and found it still blocked, which meant he had not yet understood that blocking is a full-time position I intend to hold indefinitely. He apparently decided Amara was the softer target. He did not know Amara. She picked up on the second ring. She listened to him for 4.5 minutes. She timed it. She always times things. While he explained that the situation with his business had become untenable, that he felt the response had been disproportionate, and that he wanted to reach Zola to discuss things like civilized adults. She said once, during all 4.5 minutes of it. When he finished, she said, I have a few things to say to you, Darius. Are you sitting down? She did not tell me exactly what she said next. She said only that it was thorough, and that it took 11 minutes, and that she covered the 7 years of the marriage, the restaurant incident, the fake vendor calls, the client contact, quiet campaign of intimidation he had waged against her sister's new life, and several broader observations about his character that she had been saving up since the first time she met him at Christmas 2017 and had known immediately that something was wrong. Darius hung up without saying goodbye. Did he cry? I asked. Not on the phone, Amara said. Maybe after. She paused. I did not offer him food, she said. I want that on the record. Cian Ho and I married the following June. On the rooftop, obviously. The air smelled of perilla and something warmer underneath it, particular warmth of a rooftop holding the day's heat as the evening came in. The perilla was in full bloom, thick and green, and growing exactly the way I had designed it to grow, because I had planted it, knowing the drainage was right and the light was right and the soil had been prepared properly. Good foundations matter. In gardens and in people. There were 34 guests. Amara stood beside me and started crying approximately 40 seconds in and did not stop for the duration. Yoon Jai stood beside Cian Ho and maintained absolute composure until the vows, at which point he turned to look at the city's skyline and cleared his throat 3 times and said nothing. Efficient asked Cian Ho if he had words he wanted to say. He looked at me, not at notes, not at the guests, at me. I have spent a long time, he said, being in rooms where no one could actually see me, not who I was underneath the things I owned and the decisions I made, just me. He stopped, started again. You saw me. The first time we had a real conversation, you just looked at me and saw the thing I did not know I was, still waiting for someone to see. He took a breath. I will spend whatever time I have making sure you are never unseen again. Not by me, not by anyone who gets close enough to matter. That is the only promise I know how to make completely. I had held myself together through everything that day, through the getting dressed, and Amara doing my hair, and the walk across the rooftop, and the smell of perilla in the June air, and every single moment leading to this one. Not this one. Tears came, and I did not apologize for them, and I did not wipe them away. Cian Ho reached out with his thumb and caught one before it fell. Gentle. Sure, the gesture of a man who intends to be doing this for a very long time. Darius sold what remained of Mensa Global 11 months after the acquisition. I read it in the business pages on a Wednesday morning. 4 paragraphs, his name, the company name, the sale price, which was less than half what the company had been worth 2 years earlier. The buyer was a mid-sized logistics firm with no connection to Seon-ho. I read all 4 paragraphs. I set the paper down. I picked up my coffee. Oat milk, 1 sugar, exactly how I take it, exactly how Seon-ho had known to make it from the 3rd week without being asked. I sat in the morning light coming through our kitchen window and felt, for the first time in years, complete and total absence of anything that still belonged to the past. Not relief. Something better than relief. The feeling of a door that has been closed for so long you forget it was ever open. And then one morning you walk past it and notice that not only is it closed, but you do not even remember what was on the other side. It is just a wall now, just architecture. Seon was in the next room on a call with Seoul. I could hear his voice through the wall, low, unhurried, moving through decisions the way water moves through well-designed channels. Because the channels are built right, because the work was done properly, because that is simply what good design allows. I looked out our kitchen window at the city below. Somewhere above us, on the rooftop, the perilla was growing. The chrysanthemums were coming back for the 3rd year without being asked, the way perennials do, without drama, without fanfare, just returning because returning is what they are built for. I thought about the woman who had sat in a restaurant with wine on the man beside her, and shame crawling up her neck like a second skin she could not take off. I thought about the 14 months before that, dismantling a version of herself that was never actually her. I thought about the Tuesday in April, and a man in a navy sweater who read her proposal carefully and found the one error and confirmed the rest was excellent and asked when she could start. I thought, this is what it looks like, not the dramatic version, not the wine and confrontation version. Though that happened too, and I will never not have a complicated feeling about a man who will quietly dismantle your enemy's entire business, infrastructure by Tuesday. But the real thing, the ordinary Tuesday version, soup on a kitchen table, shoulders you forget to put down until someone notices, perilla growing on a rooftop in June, a man's voice through a wall, low and unhurried, handling the world so you do not always have to. This is what it looks like when someone chooses you, like they mean it. I have one question for you before you go. When Darius walked into that restaurant, when he picked up that wine glass and poured it, what did you think Seon-ho was going to do? Did you think he would stand up, shout back, walk out? Did you think the chaos of my past was finally going to cost me the first good thing I had found? Tell me. Drop it in the comments right now. I read every single one. And if this story found you at the right moment, if it said something you needed to hear, share it with a woman in your life who has been told by someone who should have known better that she is the problem. She is not the problem. She never was. Like this video. Subscribe for more. I will see you in the next one.